I view things as I got time. I got time to be able to grow and mature, and be able to understand the ins and outs of the defenses and be able to get the good insight from the vets in the room. So I look at it as, a plus. And whenever, it's time for me to play.
Shedeur Sanders rolled into Browns camp and instantly made the whole practice feel like a recess pickup game. NFL vets suddenly looked like they'd forgotten the playbook and were just trying to keep up.
With that being said, I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that camp, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm reading.
He can sling it.
Read the team. I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Yep.
Talking about Njoku there?
Njoku, Mike Nebb. Yeah, once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
Right after Shedeur Sanders tightened his cleats and the Browns settled in for what they figured was a routine camp day, the whole vibe tilted sideways. No blazing comet, no UFO touching down at midfield, just a swagger-charged quarterback striding in like he'd crashed the wrong league and thought, yeah, I'll stick around and run this show. The Browns had no clue what storm was rolling in. You'd expect an NFL team to do a quick scout, maybe pull up a highlight reel or two, but nope. They greeted Shedeur with a shrug, only to watch him seize the field on snap one and run the whole operation like a seasoned pro.
First and foremost, he's been the best quarterback in camp. Now look, Joe Flacco ain't had many opportunities. There was a whole day I saw he didn't throw the ball at all. Here's my theory on the situation. They already know who's starting in the number 2 is. They already know. Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders is already locked up. You're missing the boat, people. You're missing the boat. Your boy, Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, they're fighting.
Shedeur didn't merely clock in, he hijacked the session. One moment he's loosening his arm, the next he's roasting veteran QBs like faded names on busted draft boards. Defensive coordinators everywhere had the same gut punch reaction. His pocket poise? Straight disrespectful. His timing? Psychic. And every pass left his hand like it was laser guided to its mark. While Shedeur Sanders was slicing up routes, the Browns secondary looked less like an NFL backfield and more like a gaggle of dads sprinting through a Saturday fun run. Big on enthusiasm, short on closing speed. Coaches fought the urge to slam the emergency horn. Players traded wide-eyed, "Are we serious?" stares, and someone even double-checked that a hidden camera crew wasn't about to pop out of the tunnel. But nope, this was pure Shedeur. Half cold-blooded surgeon, half highlight factory. He wasn't dropping a casual "I'm here," he was crafting a masterclass. From the first rep, the tempo changed. Shedeur Sanders accepted the snap with steady footwork, diagnosed the Browns' single high shell, and delivered a tight window seam route that forced the free safety to recover late. Throughout the period, he manipulated leverage with quick shoulder fakes, moved through full field progressions, and released on time from a balanced base, consistently putting the ball on his receiver's upfield shoulder. Cleveland's coverage struggled on multiple fronts. Safeties hesitated between deep half responsibilities and underneath support, creating voids at 15 to 20 yards. Cornerbacks and off-man were caught in trail position when Sanders used rhythm throws on 3-step drops, while those who tried press technique had their inside hand neutralized by his receivers' outside releases. Linebackers widened to match shallow crossers, leaving the middle hook unguarded for pivot routes and option digs. One corner attempted a line of scrimmage jam. Sanders immediately adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade, releasing the ball before the break and rendering the press ineffective. Over the session, he showcased pocket discipline, reclimbing to maintain throwing lanes rather than drifting, and finished with a series of anticipatory throws against cover 2 cloud, fitting vertical outs between the flat and deep half defenders. Sanders' combination of rapid post-snap processing, precise ball placement, and pocket efficiency exposed coverage mismatches at every level and highlighted communication gaps in the Browns secondary. By mid-session, the Browns defensive staff clearly recognized their calls were outmatched. Every adjustment, a roll to cover 6, a simulated pressure, a late rotate to 2 high, was neutralized once Shedeur Sanders confirmed the post-snap picture. Routes that had taken weeks to script were beaten by timing and location. Comeback set at 12 yards broke open before the corner's transition. Slot seam-outs dotted the void between the flat and deep half defender, and boundary receivers beat press with quick hand techniques, receiving distributing the ball before the trail man could recover. Sanders' command was methodical. He used cadence to freeze plug blitzes, re-ID'd the mic when linebackers sugared the A-gaps, and maintained a firm base so he could reset and fire without resetting his feet. His receivers benefited from that rhythm. Top of the stem, eyes back. Ball delivered on their upfield shoulder, allowing immediate transition to YAC. The Browns front tried a late stunt to compress the pocket. Sanders climbed 2 steps, re-spotted the shallow crosser, and delivered in stride, turning a potential sack into a 20-yard gain. What stood out most was how little ramp-up Sanders needed. From his first series, he processed full field concepts at tempo, cycling through progression reads without hitching. The poise under interior pressure, consistency in ball placement, and ability to manipulate zone defenders left the Browns' coordinated disguise packages ineffective and forced them into static coverage by the end of the period. In short, Sanders' efficient mechanics, rapid processing, and anticipatory accuracy rendered Cleveland's defensive game plan ineffective at every level, from pre-snap disguise to post-snap spacing.
Imagine there's many people that think Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. If the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what
listen,
they're
I've
doing.
been on every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dylan Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I'd be surprised. I just don't think.
Well, then it is a wasted pick because you took him in the top 100.
Yeah, but potentially.
Yeah.
May get away with it because of Shedeur.
An edge rusher chirped at Shedeur Sanders between snaps, hoping to shake his rhythm. On the very next play, Sanders answered with a 30-yard laser, a deep dig from the boundary side that split the single high safety and the trailing corner. He hit the top of a 5-step drop, kept a firm base, and delivered on time to the receiver's outside shoulder, turning what should have been a routine rep into a sudden change explosive. From that moment on, every coverage wrinkle the Browns tried, rotating from cover 3 to quarter half, flashing a Tampa 2 shell, mugging both A-gaps, was met with a precise counter. When corners pressed, Sanders adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade. When safeties widened, he checked to a glance post. When linebackers bailed, he found the running back on a delayed option out of the backfield. Even late simulated pressures couldn't move him off his spot. He simply climbed, reset his feet, and fired. As Cleveland's defenders rotated through checks, Sanders manipulated them with cadence and eye discipline. He froze weak side safeties long enough to create intermediate windows, then feathered the ball into those lanes before help could arrive. When the Browns finally dropped 7 and matched every route, Sanders tucked the ball and converted 2 separate 3rd and 6 situations on the ground, reminding everyone that his mobility is as calculated as his arm. By the end of the session, the defensive coordinator's call sheet looked obsolete. Sanders had neutralized blitz looks, exposed spacing issues in zone, and forced the unit into static base coverage just to survive the period. It wasn't a camp drill anymore. It was a clinic on timing, processing speed, and controlled aggression, delivered snap after snap by a quarterback who never needed a warm-up lap to own the field.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyler said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
That's it.
I want to see what he can do with David Njoku. I want to see him with Junkins. I want to see him with the first running backs. If you are cooking, if you are beating down the doors with the 3s and 4s, guess what? You deserve more.
From the first team period on, Cleveland's secondary looked a step slow. A deep third safety hesitated on a post-snap rotation, leaving Shedeur Sanders free to climb the pocket and fire a 22-yard out that arrived before the defender could plant and drive. The supporting cast around him, players fighting for roster spots, not Pro Bowl invites, benefited from his command. Sanders used tempo to control the defensive front, altered protections at the line, and located throwing lanes so quickly that one receiver didn't register the catch until he crossed the goal line. As the Browns tried new personnel groups, coverage busts multiplied. Starters slipped out for hamstring stretches while rookies rotated in, only to find the ball arriving on their blind side before they'd completed a midpoint squeeze. On a later 3rd and long, Cleveland finally closed the interior rush lanes, compressing the pocket with 3 defenders. Sanders pivoted through the traffic, stepped into a narrow escape window, and without resetting his shoulders, whipped a no-look pass to the boundary curl for a fresh set of downs. The throw turned a potential sack into an explosive play and left the coaching staff scrambling for answers.
The people who are fascinated by Shedeur for whatever reason, whether it's his play, I guess, last year was kind of fun. If you're just like a guy who grew up like loving Deion Sanders and passed that love on down to your kids, I can see why you're like that. The one thing I will give them is you're looking at this quarterback room. If you're a fan of Shedeur and say, why can't he go beat Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett? So I do understand that part of it, right? Because why not? Why couldn't he be the Brown starter in October or November?
That looks like a quarterback room where everyone will get a chance to start.
He lied to us all when he said that this was going to be an open competition, a 4-man open competition when it comes to the QB situation up there in Cleveland, in which, from the looks of it, all we've seen it be was a 3-man race. The only people that has been getting reps in with the first team or with the veterans are Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel. We've never seen my boy Shedeur Sanders get a chance to get in. Even with him doing the things that he has been doing up there, he has yet to get in with the...
Shedeur Sanders was caught off guard by Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent remarks, which have sparked talk of bringing in another starting quarterback. Commentators are debating whether Stefanski's comments reflect eroding confidence in Sanders or a brief lapse in judgment, but the rookie now faces intensified scrutiny over his role.
The Browns, we got an analyst that says that Shedeur Sanders should have some kind of a ban, banishment of some kind. Come again? Say what? For what? And we've got, this would be more troubling. If I'm a Browns fan, and this is where we're going to start, potential dissension in the ranks of the front office and the coach. And over what? Quarterback.
When a program's headline quarterback suddenly becomes the subject of sideline murmurs and quiet searches for replacements, the situation is unmistakable. It's a breach of trust. Shedeur Sanders, the passer who put Colorado back in national conversations with his production and profile, has just received a clear message that his job security is in question. Coach Kevin, the assistant previously considered to be in Sanders' corner, made remarks that ignited speculation about changing quarterbacks. Fans, analysts, and even Deion Sanders are now reassessing the team's unity and its true plan for the position. The comment was no accident. It was a deliberate signal that the staff may soon elevate a backup. For perspective, Shedeur Sanders did not step into ideal conditions last season. He was sacked so often that Colorado could have dedicated a locker to every opposing edge rusher who reached him.
Could I possibly go to bat for Kevin Stefanski as a great head coach? No, I couldn't.
Could you go at bat against him, saying he's a horrible head coach?
No, I can't. I think that's why we fall in the middle. I think that's why in a lot of these discussions, and that's why a lot of the rankings, you see him right now in that 15 to 20 range, somewhere in that middle pack of NFL head coaches.
I've said earlier, Kevin Stefanski has already been given more head coaches than any coach I've ever seen in Cleveland. Starting with the decision to move on from Baker and him clearly still having another level to get to in Tampa.
Last season, Shedeur Sanders often had to operate behind an offensive line that provided minimal protection, yet he still delivered precise throws and critical drives. At times, he seemed to be carrying a struggling roster almost on his own. Despite the constant pressure, he never complained, never threatened to transfer, and never acted entitled. He remained with Colorado because he trusted the program, trusted his father, and believed in the team's larger mission. That loyalty is why Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent statement that the quarterback competition is wide open struck so sharply. The remark implies that Sanders' starting role is insecure, as though the player who absorbed countless hits while holding the offense together is simply another name competing with walk-ons and first-year athletes who are still learning the cadence. This goes beyond ordinary coach language about fostering competition. It introduces genuine uncertainty about the staff's confidence in Sanders and invites speculation that Colorado is actively assessing outside options through the transfer portal. By characterizing the position as vacant, Stefanski has planted seeds of doubt that could quickly evolve into rumors and undermine the stability of the locker room.
I'm sorry, but when it comes to quarterback, I'm going to defer to my head coach, generally speaking, especially one with Stefanski's track record and how he's viewed across the league. So this is interesting because it tells you Kevin Stefanski's not a Shedeur Sanders guy. And it also tells us who made these picks. Exactly. The Cleveland Browns made a rather awkward decision in the NFL draft, opting to take quarterback Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round, well before he was expected to fly off the board. Then 2 rounds later, the Browns took fellow quarterback Shedeur Sanders. So what exactly is going on?
Discussion has begun about whether Colorado is actively evaluating another quarterback and preparing for life after Shedeur Sanders. Analysts are debating whether Coach Kevin's move is calculated strategy or a misstep that jeopardizes team stability. Sanders remains a top NFL prospect, Deion Sanders' son, and the program's public face. His highlights dominate social media and his jerseys outsell the team's victories. Yet he is once again being asked to reaffirm his position. The issue is more than routine roster management. It intersects with the family dynamics that shape the program. By portraying the quarterback job as open, Coach Kevin signals to both Shedeur and Deion that the staff is willing to move on despite Sanders' stature. For Shedeur, sitting through film sessions while hearing talk of potential replacements adds an unwelcome layer of uncertainty to an otherwise proven resume. The decision may reflect a desire for a quarterback with a different profile, perhaps someone more mobile and system-oriented, rather than a dismissal of Sanders' accomplishments. Many observers declared Deion Sanders was finished. They argued that his public style attracted unnecessary attention, that his health had deteriorated too far, and that his coaching career was approaching an abrupt conclusion. They misread his resolve. When speculation intensified, Sanders did not schedule a press conference or issue a formal statement. Instead, he released a short video recorded at his Texas home, walking alongside recording artist Lil Wayne. The footage established 2 facts. Although Sanders still walks with a limp, he remains active, and he intends to return to the sideline. Reports from USA Today and ESPN confirm that Sanders had temporarily left Colorado to recover from a significant, undisclosed medical condition. He lost 14 pounds and missed several summer practices, leading to widespread debate about his future. Unofficial sources suggested complications related to previous blood clot issues, but no official diagnosis was provided. Throughout Sanders' absence, numerous media outlets framed his situation in crisis language, frequently questioning whether he would coach again. By comparison, when coaches such as Lincoln Riley paused their duties for health or family reasons, coverage emphasized understanding and patience, an imbalance that reflects a common difference in how high-profile black coaches are treated.
Sanders' silence was not a retreat, it was a period of recovery. During rehabilitation, he relied on family, faith, and trusted colleagues, yet stayed connected to his program through brief online updates. The video with Lil Wayne demonstrated that he retained strong support from influential friends, countering narratives that portrayed him as isolated or on the verge of retirement. The visual evidence showed that his setback is temporary, and that he remains determined to lead Colorado into the forthcoming season.
Since accepting the Colorado position, Sanders has dramatically elevated the program's national standing. He first drew national attention to Jackson State and the broader HBCU football landscape, then moved to Boulder and transformed a one-win team into a central storyline in college athletics. His approach, combining hip-hop culture, direct communication, and open expressions of faith, has challenged conventional expectations for head coach behavior. Each step forward has been met with heightened scrutiny. His time at Jackson State was labeled a publicity stunt, his departure for Colorado was framed as abandoning HBCU culture, and his social media presence has been cast as distraction from traditional coaching responsibility. Critics often magnify Sanders' missteps and question his motives, while comparable actions by other coaches receive neutral or sympathetic coverage. Showings of enthusiasm from Brett Favre and disciplinary intensity from Nick Saban are celebrated as competitive passion, yet Sanders' displays of confidence are frequently labeled arrogance. The discrepancy illustrates deeper biases rather than differences in performance. Sanders' success challenges entrenched expectations of how a college football leader should look, speak, and act, especially a black coach who refuses to downplay his identity.
During his convalescence, Sanders maintained close communication with his staff and athletes, reinforcing the standards he had established: discipline, accountability, and belief. The program's daily messaging continued to emphasize preparation and resilience, signaling that Sanders' influence persists even when he is away from campus. Athletes echoed his mantras during workouts, confirming that his leadership extends beyond physical presence. Sanders acknowledges the seriousness of his medical challenge, but has refused to let it define him. He has publicly discussed leaning on scripture and prayer, explaining that his purpose as a mentor, father, and coach extends beyond personal adversity. In that context, the video of him walking in the Texas sun was less a strategic media effort than a straightforward demonstration of continued commitment to his team and mission. Colorado still requires Sanders' vision. Prior to his arrival, attendance was low, national media attention was minimal, and recruiting momentum had stalled. Sanders' leadership brought renewed energy, authentic identity, and higher standards of accountability. Players who previously lacked representation in college football leadership found a coach who shares, affirms, and elevates their cultural background. Sanders supplements conventional coaching priorities, scheme, fundamentals, and execution with empowerment initiatives that cultivate self-confidence and authenticity. As preseason camp approaches, Sanders intends to resume full involvement, even if medical recovery remains ongoing. His presence is expected to restore on-site leadership, stabilize the locker room, and direct media coverage toward on-field progress. For Sanders, the objective extends beyond compiling wins and includes completing a cultural transformation that expands how success and leadership are defined in modern college football. Those who predict his decline overlook the underlying traits, faith, perseverance, and purpose that have supported Sanders throughout his career. Doubts, rumors, and disproportionate scrutiny have followed him from playing days into coaching, and he has consistently responded with results. His current health setback is another obstacle, not a conclusion. The broader initiative he leads, centered on authenticity, opportunity, and high standards, continues. When Sanders returns to the sideline, it will mark the next stage of a movement he has guided from Jackson State to Boulder. The recent period of quiet has been strategic rather than passive. Instead of defending himself in daily briefings, Sanders focused on rehabilitation, remote program oversight, and family support. Each brief social media message reinforced a consistent theme: faith and preparation. He has articulated gratitude for medical professionals and has reiterated that his mission at Colorado is unfinished. His public references to scripture have been direct but measured, aligning with his long-standing practice of integrating faith into leadership. By walking through his ranch with Lil Wayne, Sanders signaled continuity. The clip underscored that influential supporters remain engaged, that Sanders' broader network values his vision, and that he remains capable of navigating physical challenges. The visible limp was not evidence of imminent retirement. Rather, it documented the reality of ongoing recovery and the resilience with which he approaches each obstacle. Colorado's athletic administration and football staff continue to affirm Sanders' program direction. Recruitment communications cite his established record in fostering cultural relevance and national exposure. Prospective athletes respond to a coach who presents a transparent path to development, both on and off the field. Current players refer to Sanders' coaching points with clarity, citing specific drills and expectations that remain unchanged during his absence. These indicators demonstrate that the core structures Sanders implemented are functioning and that his return will be an amplification, not a restart. Criticism regarding Sanders' public persona often conflates media style with coaching substance. Analysis from opponents suggests that social media engagement dilutes football preparation, yet Sanders' staffs emphasize time management and delegation. Defensive and offensive coordinators handle in-game adjustments, while Sanders directs overall culture, recruitment, and leadership. He has articulated that visibility serves to amplify program accomplishments and enhance player opportunities, not replace strategic football planning. Some commentary has attempted to reframe Sanders' health issue as evidence that his coaching model is unsustainable. The argument ignores the documented health challenges faced by numerous coaches across levels of competition. For example, college coaches recovering from heart procedures or joint replacements have returned to successful seasons after appropriate medical clearance. Sanders' case follows a comparable trajectory. Medical complications require temporary separation, structured rehabilitation is prioritized, and a managed return is planned. Institutional medical protocols at Colorado dictate clearance requirements. Sanders will meet those before resuming full sideline duties. Colorado's players have expressed public confidence in Sanders' eventual return, citing regular virtual check-ins and continued accountability. Several athletes noted that positional meetings included recorded messages from Sanders reinforcing tactical goals and personal discipline. These details confirm that Sanders has remained actively engaged, albeit remotely, and that team culture remains aligned with his principles. Looking ahead, Colorado's schedule will attract national attention, both for on-field competitiveness and the storyline of Sanders' comeback. Analysts will evaluate how quickly he reestablishes day-to-day rhythm and whether his physical limitations influence practice oversight. Internal planning accommodates gradual escalation of responsibilities, with medical staff and strength and conditioning personnel contributing to phase reintegration. The broader significance of Sanders' return extends beyond Colorado. His visibility continues to challenge prevailing narratives about leadership styles and pathways in college athletics. By prioritizing authenticity, open articulation of faith, and cultural expression, Sanders offers a contrasting template to more conventional models. His eventual recovery and sideline presence will reinforce the argument that diverse leadership profiles can succeed in elite collegiate competition. In summary, rumors of Deion Sanders' coaching demise were premature. Verified reports confirm a substantial but temporary medical setback. He used the time away to focus on health, sustain program engagement, and rely on a support system anchored in family, friends, and faith. His recent public appearance demonstrated active recovery and reaffirmed his intention to resume leadership in Boulder. The forthcoming season will test Colorado on the field, but it will also underscore the durability of Sanders' vision, one that combines competitive ambition with cultural resonance. Observers who continue to question his longevity overlook the resilience and purpose that have defined his career. Sanders' return is imminent, and the movement he leads remains intact.
This is exactly what he says. I'm told the footage of Shedeur Sanders meeting with the Giants is so bad that both the Browns and the Sanders family have threatened legal action if it is published.
The New York Giants have released audio from their draft interview with Shedeur Sanders, and the disclosure has drawn intense public reaction. Fans want to know whether Sanders made critical remarks and why the Giants shared material that should have remained confidential. The situation revolves around an open microphone, contentious comments, and the broader implications of the leak. The New York Giants published a brief, edited segment from their interview with Shedeur Sanders and withheld the remaining footage. Observers are debating whether this was a strategic public relations decision or an attempt to discredit him. The team has offered no additional explanation, and many fans view the limited release as inadequate and potentially misleading. They are demanding full transparency and accusing the organization of orchestrating a negative narrative. While criticism of Sanders is vocal, his supporters are responding with equal intensity.
There was another team that he sat down with.
What do you mean it didn't go well after that?
So, he was pissed that they
did that to him.
They did that to him.
He counter confronted
the
them.
same thing they do to every other quarterback prospect. They did that to him. They slide in a mistake to see if you catch it.
Right. And so
because you're the quarterback.
But he didn't take it as a correction. He took it as like he got pissed off.
Yeah, and it's like so here's another one. So another one was, he throws a bad interception, and it was a deep throw early in the game, and he comes back and they go in the meeting, they show the interception.
The Giants have released only a brief excerpt of the interview and are refusing to share the rest. Their decision has drawn criticism across TikTok, X, and Facebook, where many see it as a poorly handled public relations move. Fans are calling for the full recording to be published so the situation can be judged in its entirety.
The GM is on film that the son, they asked the son last draft, yo, who you think I should pick? His son yo, you need to get the Jaden Daniels, big. This is what his son, it's on tape. You should go Jaden Daniels. He laughing at his son. And all right, cool, get Jaden Daniels. I don't even know how that tape got out. I wouldn't have let the get out.
Shedeur Sanders appears unfazed by the situation. Although the Giants suggested he was more hype than substance, their handling of the interview has instead elevated his visibility. Analysts across major sports outlets are now discussing him more than before, keeping his name prominent in the news cycle.
New York Giants, where these tapes at? You hear me? Because if Shedeur Sanders was so unprofessional, y'all would have leaked the tapes for the whole world could see, right? Cause understand, it's a lot of he say, she say. But one thing I do know, as a young black man growing up in this world, being straightforward and not sugarcoat anything.
The Giants' PR team appears to reject Sanders' family connection outright, a decision many view as unprofessional and lacking nuance. Internal discussions seem to have dismissed quarterbacks with prominent relatives as poor fits for the organization, revealing limited awareness of public perception. The response was swift. A single edited clip ignited widespread debate on social media, with fans asking why essential segments were held back and what the team might be hiding. Critics argue that if
If the full interview contains nothing damaging, the club should release it in its entirety. Online discussion intensified immediately and continues to gain momentum.
What they do during the film and the combine and the meetings is teams will install mistakes intentionally planted in the install, and they want you to catch them. Shedeur didn't, and when a coach called him out, once again, it didn't sit well. It's like, bro, there's not many teams needing quarterbacks, especially since Pittsburgh appears to have a deal with Aaron Rodgers and Tennessee's getting Kale Moore.
The Giants' decision to withhold the full interview has produced an unintended result. Instead of diminishing interest in Shedeur Sanders, it has intensified it. Media outlets and analysts are now examining every on-field rep, press comment, and public appearance as evidence of how he conducts himself under scrutiny. Each throw, adjustment, and answer is tracked and evaluated against league standards, reinforcing the view that he remains composed and professional. Many fans contend that the organization has misrepresented Sanders and suggest the issue may stem from the Giants' view of his father, Deion Sanders. They see the partial release as an attempt to raise doubts about his character by association. That perception has only made his profile more compelling. The discussion has shifted from whether he deserves a high draft position to how effectively he withstands sustained pressure. Sanders is now regarded not just as a talented prospect, but as a symbol of resilience, central to debates about transparency and organizational strategy. Even if the Giants eventually provide more context, the visibility they have created for him is unlikely to fade.
The most fun yet the most difficult thing I cover and we cover all year long is not games. It's the NFL draft. Because I've said this many times, you get lied to for a month to 2 months up to it. And so often during the draft, and every few drafts, there's a guy that really falls, precipitously falls. This year it was Shedeur Sanders, it's been Aaron Rodgers, it's been Dan Marino. Every few years somebody falls a lot. And so, but those stories don't come out until like the fall.
Criticism of Shedeur Sanders from within the Giants organization has become increasingly public. Team communications appear focused on casting him as an overhyped prospect, whose character should be questioned, a narrative that seems aimed at shaping opinion rather than assessing performance. Yet each selective release or negative remark has instead amplified attention on Sanders and elevated his reputation. Efforts to confine him to a narrow, unfavorable image continue to produce the opposite effect, reinforcing his position as an underdog who endures external pressure. The debate has shifted from football analysis to broader concerns about narrative control and transparency. Fans, reporters, and online communities are still urging the Giants to publish the full interview, arguing that only complete context can resolve speculation. The organization's refusal to comply has intensified scrutiny and led many observers to conclude that the team underestimated public reaction and now faces questions it could have avoided with full disclosure.
The tapes, the New York Giants have the tape. They definitely have the tape. It's confirmation that they have the tape. Shedeur didn't do nothing. Is what they saying he did. I'm gonna tell you what these mixed reaction right here. So we already know about the New York Giants, but the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin reported admired Sanders' talent, but hesitated to draft him due to previous challenges with quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, leading to more cautious approach. Las Vegas Raiders. Sanders met with Raiders at the NFL scouting combine and expressed enthusiasm about potentially joining the team. His familiarity with the West Coast offense and quick release was noted positive, though concerns about his ceiling.
Hours after the Giants posted that short audio clip, the timeline never slowed. Comment threads filled with frame-by-frame breakdowns, lip-read attempts, and side-by-side comparisons of what was said versus what was left out. Reporters called league contacts. No one could explain why a franchise would stir this level of curiosity only to seal the vault. Each refusal sharpened focus on Shedeur Sanders, turning routine throws into national talking points. Analysts kept circling back to the same note. His cadence at the line looks unchanged, steady against the noise. Hashtags demanding the full interview, trend drop, and trend again. Podcast hosts bump scheduled segments to lead with the leak. Rival teams get asked how they would handle a similar situation, then quietly check their own archives. Inside Giants headquarters, the plan to shape the story looks less like strategy and more like a slow burn spotlight they can't switch off. And now every preseason snap, every media availability, every stray sideline camera angle gets fed into a loop that asks, what are they still hiding? The file remains locked. Curiosity keeps compounding. Until someone presses upload or steps to a podium and explains the redactions, the subject drifts away from depth charts and play design, fixing instead on secrecy, control, and the risk of underestimating how fast attention turns pressure into permanence. Momentum isn't fading, it keeps recalibrating, louder, impossible to mute.
Sometime last week, and then, and I just tweeted that out again this morning, and then today, the Joe Flacco one got posted. So running through this, and then of course we'll still have Dylan will be next, and then Shedeur will come last.
As training camp nears, Mary Kay Cabot is providing straightforward analysis of the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition. The starter has not been named, but she has moved away from her earlier skepticism of Shedeur Sanders and now acknowledges his talent and potential. Cabot explained that if Joe Flacco is chosen to start week 1, it will mean he is the most prepared to play immediately. This approach would also give younger quarterbacks such as Kenny Pickett time to adjust, refine their skills, and maximize their potential while Flacco handles the early workload. She added that a Flacco start would not prevent Sanders from earning the position later in the season. The depth chart remains flexible, and Sanders' continued development could put him in line for an opportunity as circumstances evolve. Cabot also noted that Pickett could win the job for week 1, but he must demonstrate he can integrate smoothly with the offense and perform reliably under pressure. The Browns want a leader who can control the huddle, execute plays efficiently, and maintain composure. Pickett's performances in upcoming practices and preseason games will be critical in determining whether he secures the starting role or Sanders ultimately takes the reins as the season progresses.
Things like that. It doesn't mean that that Kenny can't swoop in there and steal that job by them, but he's really going to have to show that he has a complete mastery of this scheme and this system, and that they don't have to dial it back a lot to put him in there. So these will be some considerations, and I do think that that as the preseason goes along, it will become evident.
Mary Kay Cabot recently stated that Shedeur Sanders is ready, and the Cleveland Browns are monitoring him closely. After a strong showing during organized team activities and minicamp, Sanders has made notable strides in his development. With continued progress, he is expected to return to the field prepared to contribute meaningfully. The Browns coaching staff is tracking his growth, and anticipation about his long-term role is increasing. Cabot added that if Sanders maintains this trajectory and continues to demonstrate poise within the team, he will have a legitimate chance to earn the starting quarterback job. Each practice rep strengthens his case, reinforcing the possibility that his development could benefit both the player and the organization. As Sanders impresses, discussion about his future in Cleveland becomes more compelling. Cabot also emphasized Sanders' advanced understanding of the offense. She noted that his football IQ appears in every drill and that he seems ready to execute the Browns system at full speed. His ability to process defenses quickly and make decisive reads distinguishes him from his peers. With the appropriate opportunity, Cabot believes Sanders could become a genuine difference maker for the Browns. One area Cabot highlighted is Sanders' command of pre-snap adjustments. His capacity to diagnose defensive fronts and communicate changes gives him an edge and reflects high football intelligence. If he translates those reads into consistent connections with his playmakers, he could elevate the Browns' offense significantly. By comparison, Cabot said quarterback Dylan Gabriel is still refining his grasp of complex terminology and play calling. While Gabriel possesses upside, Sanders' comfort with intricate concepts and his ability to manage tight pockets under pressure give him a clear advantage at this stage. Gabriel must sharpen those elements to compete at Sanders' level. Cabot previously reported that Sanders had already earned first-team practice snaps ahead of Gabriel. Her latest update confirms that Sanders is now approved as the Browns' starting quarterback, solidifying the organization's commitment to him as QB1. Expectations are high, and his response to the challenge will be closely watched throughout training camp and preseason. Cabot further noted that head coach Kevin Stefanski authorized Sanders to take expanded first-team reps beginning next month. This milestone underscores Sanders' readiness and the coaching staff's confidence in his progress. As the regular season approaches, Sanders aims to cement his status as the starter, and the competition for that position is intensified. Though Sanders leads the race, Kenny Pickett remains in contention. Cabot stressed that Pickett must prove he can integrate seamlessly with the offense and perform consistently under pressure. His performance over the next several weeks will determine whether he can challenge Sanders for the starting role. With both quarterbacks vying for the top spot, the Browns' Week 1 starter will be one of the most scrutinized decisions of the upcoming season. For now, Cabot's reporting underscores Sanders' rapid ascent, strong football intellect, and growing command of the offense, qualities that position him well to lead Cleveland's offense when the opportunity arrives. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers
and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with seven-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created, the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft picks developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons Shedeur and Shiloh or two-way standout Travis Hunter. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention, attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffalo season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. That influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade, while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent: empower athletes, hold adults accountable, and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a fifth-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics and interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear: the most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles: processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws in full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review.
None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work. Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Browns training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone periods. The throws were varied, a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure. While national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants, while other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines. It was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed Week 1 starter with sufficient continuity, while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations: high red zone, low red zone, 3rd and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Berry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines further, install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a third down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align. Efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear, side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same. What more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation.
We've got news.
Got news.
About my Cleveland Browns. We've got an oblique problem. Obliques are big deals, especially when it's your quarterback. Now, he might be 4th on the depth chart, but he was number 1 in the preseason game last week, and he did a great job. 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. Shedeur Sanders has an oblique injury. That is not good. I do not like this. I hate this because I want to see more reps for Shedeur Sanders.
Shedeur Sanders, a projected breakout this season, has been sidelined unexpectedly. The Browns coaching staff confirmed an oblique injury significant enough to keep him out of all activity. No reps, no drills, no warm-ups. Concerns are rising about how this may affect his momentum and force adjustments to the team's plan. The focus now is his recovery timeline, the impact on his development, and the next steps for the quarterback depth chart.
Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders injured his oblique during practice today, putting his status in doubt for Saturday's preseason game against the Eagles. He's the latest quarterback on Cleveland's roster who has dealt with a health issue, joining fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett. Sanders, who is trying to fight his way up the Browns depth chart, started the preseason opener last week and threw to practice. So how concerning is this for Shedeur as he is trying to, again, make his way up the depth chart, be QB2, potentially QB1 in the future?
Dillon Gabriel taking Shedeur Sanders' QB1 spot after Sanders suffers an oblique injury is more than a roster change. It signals the staff is choosing urgency over efficiency. You do not replace a quarterback operating near a 70% completion rate with one coming off a 32% outing unless the decision is driven by desperation or poor evaluation. That is not strategy, it is avoidable loss of production. The impact on accuracy, timing, and drive sustainability is clear, and the difference is apparent to anyone watching.
Well, here's what we know. I mean, after practice, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, was not available to the media, but I did talk to him on the field as the players were coming off, and he told me that Shedeur Sanders complained of oblique soreness during the warm-ups this morning.
Shedeur Sanders' absence isn't just a gap in the lineup, it's a setback for the entire offense. He thrives under pressure and makes throws others won't attempt. When he's healthy, every pass has intent, every drive has rhythm, and opposing defenses know they're in for a long day. Replace him with Dillon Gabriel and the defense senses an opening. Corners press tighter, safeties cheat down, and linebackers blitz more aggressively because they don't expect the same timing, velocity, or accuracy.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I'm a fan. I'm not even going to try to hide it. Rich,
you guys are fans. Like, you guys talk about the Cleveland Browns quite a bit.
Yeah,
it's almost annoying to me.
It aggravates people. Like, people don't like the fact that Rich talks a lot
They must
about
love
Shedeur.
I'm here.
But it's like, you have a friend, and that friend's child is following in the family's footsteps. You want them to do well. I don't know why people have such an issue. I know Rich is supposed to be impartial, but it's kind of hard when you have that type of tie to it. But yeah, I'm rooting for Shedeur, man. And
Dillon Gabriel's 32% completion rate isn't just poor, it's untenable at this level. A number that low needs no context. It means 2 misses for every completion. Weather, opponent, and play calls are secondary when efficiency is that limited. That output does not sustain drives or keep the full playbook viable, yet he is starting while Shedeur Sanders is sidelined. The contrast is clear. Sanders brings accuracy, timing, and command. Gabriel's recent performance reflects inconsistency and missed opportunities. Choosing Gabriel under these circumstances reduces offensive reliability and invites defensive pressure. It is a decision that sacrifices efficiency and field position.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dillon Gabriel, but to the Shedeur Sanders point, it is unfortunate because I thought he was gaining some momentum. I know the practice that they had before they left for Philly, Daniel Oyefusi reported that he actually took the most reps of all of the quarterbacks. And that was the first time that had happened. It was the first time that he had went ahead of Dillon Gabriel, practicing with the twos, etc. So, like, coming off that stout performance against the Carolina Panthers, he was gaining momentum.
If this were a clean evaluation, there would be no debate. Shedeur Sanders is the clear choice. He's accurate, composed, and consistent with a track record of high-level production. Dillon Gabriel remains a question mark, and not the kind that stresses defense. He's the kind that makes coaches consider leaning on the run to limit risk and protect field position. The reality is that injuries create openings for players who haven't earned them. Gabriel has stepped into QB1 while Sanders is out, but that reflects circumstance, not superiority.
We don't know the severity of this oblique injury and whether it will even keep him out of Saturday's game against the Eagles. As for moving up the depth chart, I'm the Browns preseason sideline reporter. I was there Friday night when he burst onto the stage and set the NFL world buzzing. And yes, his demeanor was tremendous. His poise was tremendous. He did the things that were asked of him. But at the end of the day, he wasn't actually asked to do all that much.
The real concern is how this could attach to Shedeur Sanders' reputation. The NFL is unforgiving about availability. An oblique injury for a quarterback isn't minor. It affects mechanics, torque, and timing. Even with a strong return, the injury-prone label can linger. For the Cleveland Browns, or any team seeking stability under center, that perception is toxic. Teams don't want a player they fear won't make it through October. That's the risk. Talent doesn't always overcome league politics. Once questions about durability start, they rarely fade. They surface in contract terms, roster decisions, and sideline evaluations.
So Shedeur Sanders is injured again? If you were following along on social media today for the Browns' first joint practice in Philadelphia against the Eagles, wow, you were in for a tumultuous ride. I mean, all the reporters, both Browns and Eagles reporters, were pretty much flabbergasted at the fact that Shedeur Sanders was taking 0 team reps during the day, and even Tyler Huntley was getting team reps instead of Shedeur. And then it came out, obviously, everybody's speculating. There's people calling for Kevin's jobs, and before I go any further, I don't blame anybody, ever.
Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel's numbers should be sidelining him, not elevating him. A 32% completion rate isn't a dip, it's a warning sign that points to issues with field vision, timing, and receiver cohesion. That's the quarterback taking snaps while Shedeur Sanders is out. Put their work side by side and the gap is obvious. Sanders shows consistent placement, timing, and footwork that reflect high-level execution. Gabriel's recent output introduces variability that shrinks the call sheet and stalls drives. You can't claim the priority is winning while starting a quarterback who isn't reliably delivering routine completions. Fans recognize it, receivers lose confidence and tempo when targets are off, the offensive line's urgency fades when protection doesn't translate into productive throws, team belief in the quarterback is fragile, and once it erodes, a season can come apart quickly.
We could be looking at, 3/4 of Snoop and maybe 1/4 of Dillon Gabriel. Not really exciting for the fans. Of course, it would be nice to see what Dillon looks like. Did spend third-round capital on him.
If you're Dillon Gabriel and you're a rookie,
is not
you
be
want to get healed. You want the reps. You want to take these reps. So what do you do to prepare yourself and get ready? Because, man, when rookies get injured, it's like these reps are so valuable.
Yeah, sets them back a lot. We do have some video here. Mike Garafolo had some video of Jalen Hurts kind of helping Shedeur
used his cart to get off the field here.
Shedeur Sanders changes the entire equation. His presence under center keeps defenses honest, keeps teammates engaged, and expands the coaching staff's options. You can call vertical shots, open the playbook, and control the game's tempo. Dillon Gabriel limits that. With him, the playbook narrows, drives stall, and the defense ends up on the field too long trying to compensate. The Cleveland Browns are not in a position to gamble at quarterback. This is a franchise with a difficult history at the position. With Gabriel, the issues are visible from the stands. A 32% completion rate won't jump to 60% with a few extra reps. If anything, it will decline as defenses present looks they would not risk against Shedeur. And that's the core issue. Shedeur Sanders at 80% is still a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel at his best. That isn't exaggeration, it's the numbers. If Sanders is a 70% passer when healthy, even a drop to 60% keeps him well ahead of where Gabriel is now. Yet the team is rolling with the quarterback who isn't delivering routine completions. Every week Sanders is out, his hold on QB1 loosens. That's the hard truth. The longer Gabriel stays in the role, the more coaches cite continuity and chemistry to cover what's happening on the field. Every throw and every drive has to be a statement, not just to win, but to erase any notion that Gabriel is a legitimate alternative. In the NFL, QB1 isn't handed back because you used to be the best option. You have to take it.
Started off with some positive news for Shedeur, and then it kind of just went left real quick. Shedeur got the news early on that if Dillon Gabriel couldn't go, he would get his second straight start in the Saturday preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then he went on to injure his oblique. For the fans who don't know exactly what part of the body the oblique is at and what that injury is and how it can impact the quarterback, can you explain to them what is an oblique injury?
It's like up in this area, right? Well, you can't see me, but like right up in here, when you go to throw, like obviously that's all that. So
the truth is straightforward. The Cleveland Browns, or any team in this situation, aren't going anywhere meaningful with Dillon Gabriel under center. You can frame it as progress and point to selective highlights, but reality will level it out, and by then the season is already slipping. Shedeur Sanders is the difference between a team with a path forward and the team playing out the schedule. He reads coverages, delivers on-time throws, and forces defenses to respect every level of the field. Gabriel turns the offense into guesswork. The NFL is built on results, and the results are clear. Gabriel's 32% completion rate functions as a warning sign. It doesn't need context, a clinic, or a film session to explain. It signals inefficiency that stalls drives and compresses the playbook. Yet he has been handed the role Shedeur established through precision, composure, and production. That decision undercuts the stated goal of winning. With Sanders, the offense retains structure, rhythm, and threat. With Gabriel, it narrows and exposes the defense to longer stretches on the field.
You first, when you take a look at both of these QBs, who had the most impressive start so far in the preseason?
Well, to me, it was Shedeur. I didn't see any interceptions when he was out there. Didn't see anything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dillon Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother, but I'm going to go with Shedeur. The pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just call out Dillon Gabriel. He held him accountable and made him rethink his comments. The moment Dillon Gabriel spoke and went after Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't a minor slip. He crossed the line and stepped directly into Stephen A. Smith's wheelhouse. And Smith answered with a clear, direct response that left no room for misinterpretation.
The comparisons were emanating from the media more so than anybody else. And that's what I think, that's exactly who I think he was directing his comments towards. Having said that, Dillon Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field.
This wasn't casual sports commentary, it was a decisive critique. Dillon Gabriel's comments were taken apart by Stephen A. Smith with clear, direct points. Gabriel, a quarterback with solid stats but limited top-level achievements, chose to take a public shot at Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, who has handled sustained media scrutiny and on-field expectations, became the target of an unnecessary criticism. Smith responded by challenging Gabriel's standing to make that claim, and by defending Sanders on the facts. The outcome was clear. Gabriel overreached, and Sanders didn't deserve the hit.
Dan Orlovsky would sit up here in comparison to Shedeur Sanders, who did no such thing, and say, hey, thought he looked better.
I mean, I got to give him the edge here. I thought it wasn't bad. A pick six and a fumble, and we can get over fumbles. Have you heard anybody say that? I know it's possible. Have you ever heard anybody say, we get over?
Stephen A. Smith responded immediately. As soon as Dillon Gabriel made his comments about Shedeur Sanders, Smith delivered a clear, point-by-point critique that drew national attention across the NCAA media cycle. Dillon Gabriel has a reputation as a good quarterback, not a dominant one. He can post strong numbers against opponents like Tulsa, but his performance has been inconsistent when the stakes and competition rise to playoff level.
Well, those who produce get treated differently than those who don't. What he said echoes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment, because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be QB.
Dillon Gabriel is a capable quarterback, but not a standout. Even so, he chose to talk down to Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who has navigated constant scrutiny and pressure and still represents the future of a program that was struggling before he arrived. The comparison was weak. The criticism was unnecessary. Stephen A. Smith recognized that and dismantled Gabriel's argument with a clear, direct response.
How the Browns react to this, how the locker room reacts to this, how Shedeur reacts to this, because it was a clear shot at Shedeur. But let's say Dillon Gabriel's talking about the media. How could you be a brand new quarterback in the NFL and the first time you get behind a mic after your first game, you throw the media under the bus? That's arrogance.
Stephen A. Smith excels in moments like this. When Dillon Gabriel made his remarks about Shedeur Sanders, Smith responded with a focused, direct critique. He questioned Gabriel's standing to make that claim, noting that Gabriel has transferred between programs and has not been a Heisman finalist. Without theatrics, Smith laid out why Gabriel's resume doesn't justify taking public shots at Sanders. Smith's point was clear. Targeting Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback central to his program's future and consistently under intense scrutiny, was misplaced. Gabriel's criticism lacked the substance to support it, and Smith methodically showed why.
Today on his 42nd I want you to be meaner birthday. That's number one. Number two, after the game, the Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said there was a mix-up in the routes and that players were in the area that they shouldn't have been.
Look at Stephen A's face. Look at Stephen A's face. Look at his face.
Stephen A.
Oh my Lord.
The strength of Stephen A. Smith's response was that he didn't just address Gabriel's remarks. He challenged the image around him. Dillon Gabriel often presents himself as an overlooked contender ready to surprise. But the reality is that his profile hasn't commanded broad attention. It's a clear reminder that not every opinion carries equal weight. In defending Shedeur Sanders, Stephen A. was direct and precise. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback. He is Deion Sanders' son, which subjects him to scrutiny far beyond anything Gabriel has faced. Even under that pressure, Shedeur has maintained his composure, shown confidence, and delivered in key moments that helped revive a program many had written off.
Stupidity, all of it. I thought it was a clear shot at Shedeur due to the fact that his Oregon coach threw a shot at Coach Prime and Shedeur during their meeting at Colorado last year. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. Let's see what happens this week. I see a lot of the media talking about they think it was about the media and not about Shedeur. And I think that's a chess move.
For Dillon Gabriel to take shots at Shedeur Sanders was a miscalculation. Stephen A. Smith made the mismatch clear. Gabriel's attempt to shame Sanders was unnecessary and counterproductive. You don't target Deion Sanders' son when Deion has turned Colorado into primetime television. It underscored that Dillon Gabriel has often played with a chip on his shoulder because the spotlight hasn't followed him. He has been around long enough to compile numbers but not to earn broad respect. That's why going after Shedeur was misguided. Sanders, despite ups and downs, drives headlines. Gabriel's most notable headlines have been his transfers. Stephen A. Smith pressed that point without hesitation, challenging Gabriel's standing and leaving his argument looking like a forced throw that turns into a pick six.
you know what, still needs to thank me a little bit more for that restaurant I treated him and his family to, because it was big time, and stop embarrassing me by going places and trying to use coupons. That's how pathetic he is. The point is that, yeah, a pick six and a fumble is usually considered a bad day.
Stephen A. Smith didn't need to raise his voice to make the point. He presented Dillon Gabriel as a player whose talk outpaces his resume and defended Shedeur Sanders with clear comparisons. That's why he called Gabriel out so directly. The comparison wasn't just unfair, it was forced. Now look at Gabriel's record. The numbers are solid and he can win against average defenses, but the resume lacks defining markers. There's no sustained Heisman contention, no late season surge that reshaped the national picture, and no postseason moment that cements a legacy. The track record reflects steady production, not top-tier impact. That's the gap Smith underscored. Gabriel's criticism of Shedeur Sanders wasn't supported by what he has accomplished, while Sanders continues to carry a program under constant scrutiny.
Let's see some of them step up and make some plays out there.
Ain't no way.
Gabriel
Ain't no way. He's not built like that. No way.
And this one is picked off and going back the other way.
Oh my God, why did he stop playing?
Now it's a foot race. And that is that.
They told me bust out my AP, perfect timing. H-time, we about to get legendary. Shedeur start the next game, baby. Shout out Dillon though, you know what I'm saying? Bro, I love you, my heart. What am I bigger than cheese, bro? You know what I'm saying? But Shedeur got it.
Shedeur Sanders is a national brand who draws viewers for both performance and result. Dillon Gabriel's attempt to diminish him read as resentment. And Stephen A. Smith called out the insecurity and lack of awareness directly. Colorado under Deion Sanders is prime time, and Shedeur sits at the center of that spotlight. If Gabriel expected the sports world to agree while he took a shot at Shedeur, he misread the moment. Smith dismantled the argument and questioned the credibility behind it. Gabriel will move on. He'll keep playing, give interviews, and have fans, but this exchange will trail his media profile as a reminder of a misstep. It's a clear example of a resume that doesn't justify taking public aim at a quarterback carrying that level of scrutiny and responsibility.
For the Cleveland Browns preseason game today is that the way that some white folks watched Shedeur Sanders last week is the way that some black folks were watching Dillon Gabriel today. And it's not Dillon Gabriel for Dillon Gabriel's sake. Most folks don't have a problem with Dillon Gabriel. It's what he represents, which is the disrespect of a black person for no other apparent reason than they are a confident black person.
Dillon Gabriel thought he was aiming up. Instead, he was placed back among quarterbacks who are good but not great. Stephen A. Smith made the central point. Dillon Gabriel doesn't shape the conversation. Sports are about narrative as much as numbers, and Gabriel's story doesn't move the culture, while Shedeur Sanders does. Smith highlighted that contrast clearly. By the end, Gabriel's credibility had taken a measurable hit. The critique was decisive and sent a broader message to any player considering public shots at Shedeur Sanders. If you step into that debate, you will be held to a higher standard and your resume will be tested. Dillon Gabriel learned that the hard way.
I'm about to unleash about Shedeur Sanders. I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened by the way Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League. Now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
The Cleveland Browns are once again mishandling a promising quarterback. Skip Bayless criticized the organization for failing to develop Shedeur Sanders and for misusing his skill set. He argued that the team's decisions are undermining Sanders' progress and turning a major investment into a cautionary example. Bayless pointed to inconsistent usage, questionable play calling, and a lack of clear direction as key issues limiting Sanders. He said the Browns need a defined development plan and stronger support if they expect Sanders to succeed. Skip Bayless delivered a direct, critical assessment this week. After seeing Shedeur Sanders in a Browns uniform, he argued that Cleveland is mishandling the quarterback and undermining his development. Bayless said the team's approach shows poor planning and inadequate support around Sanders. He dismissed excuses about strategy and emphasized the need for better coaching, deployment, and protection. In his view, the Browns are setting themselves up for problems before the season begins unless they establish a clear plan for Sanders. Given the team's recent decisions, his reaction is understandable. Cleveland has a history of inconsistent quarterback development. Shedeur Sanders is a premium prospect, the son of a Hall of Famer, a proven college performer, and a widely recognized figure. The organization should prioritize his reps, protection, and a clear development plan, not place him behind Dillon Gabriel as if he were a secondary option.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders. And I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start line, and he hasn't had any reps for the first team at all. Think about that. So you just gonna throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice.
Yet here we are. Cleveland has one of the most publicized prospects and is handling him like a depth piece. The broader issue is the franchise's long record of quarterback instability and inconsistent development. That history colors every move they make. When the Browns draft a quarterback, fans don't anticipate a long-term answer. They brace for another reset. Shedeur Sanders should be treated as a priority, not as an afterthought behind Dillon Gabriel.
Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well. So what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job, in this instance, Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill?
When Browns fans see another quarterback selected, they brace for another setback. The franchise's recent history, from Johnny Manziel's failed stint to the rocky handling of Baker Mayfield, reflects inconsistent development and short-term decision-making. Against that backdrop, Skip Bayless's reaction to Shedeur Sanders on Cleveland's roster was blunt. He argued the team is already mishandling a premium prospect by treating him as a secondary option instead of a centerpiece for the future. Bayless's position is straightforward. Sanders is not just a name, he brings proven college production, leadership traits, and significant visibility that can strengthen both the offense and the organization's broader profile. Burying him on the depth chart behind Dillon Gabriel signals a lack of a clear development plan and wastes early momentum. Instead, Bayless contends, Cleveland should establish a defined pathway. First-team practice reps, protection and personnel tailored to his strengths, deliberate play calling that accelerates processing, and measured in-game opportunities that build confidence and execution. In his view, the Browns need alignment from the front office to the coaching staff to prioritize Sanders' growth. Continuing to treat him like a depth piece risks repeating the same cycle that has undermined previous quarterbacks. Committing to a coherent plan gives Sanders and the franchise a realistic chance to convert potential into sustained performance.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that. And the more that the players see it, they're going to, then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. No. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelsey's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible Plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
I have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel. The 2025 NFL Draft was expected to be Shedeur Sanders' moment. Many projected him as a top 10 talent and a headline quarterback in one of the most discussed college football storylines in years. Instead of walking across the stage on the first night, he waited through 3 days without a call. There was no celebration, only silence. When the phone finally rang at pick no. 144 in the 5th round, it was the Cleveland Browns. With that selection, the financial outlook changed dramatically. The Sanders family believes this was not a typical draft slide, but the result of coordinated action. They are pursuing a $100 million lawsuit alleging collusion across parts of the league. In the months before the draft, Sanders was consistently discussed among the top quarterbacks in the class. Television and digital analysts praised his poise, accuracy, leadership, and command. Scouts highlighted a 74.1% completion rate, record-setting stretches at Colorado, and his rise from an HBCU star to a national figure. Consensus expectations placed him in the first round or early second. Draft night unfolded differently. As picks accumulated, there was little indication that his name would be called. The atmosphere at his private gathering shifted from anticipation to doubt. When the Browns selected him late on day 3, projections for his first contract dropped from an estimated range in the mid-$30 million to approximately $4.6 million, with corresponding reductions in likely endorsements and long-term positioning. According to Deion Sanders and others close to the family, this was not about performance, injury, or conduct. They argue it was coordinated. Attorneys were contacted immediately. The allegation is straightforward. Sanders' value was suppressed intentionally. The family's position is that this was a calculated decision within parts of the league, not an isolated set of evaluations. The legal claims focus on communications that, if authenticated, could be significant. Internal emails, text messages, and owner-to-owner conversations. The family's representatives contend that these materials show a deliberate effort to avoid drafting Sanders in early rounds based on perceived image concerns rather than football merit. One message reportedly under review framed the decision in branding terms. Drafting Shedeur would mean inheriting the Prime brand. The complaint asserts that this view led some teams to discourage others from selecting him unless necessary, not for film-based reasons, but to avoid perceived attention and external pressure tied to his family's profile. A related thread involves speculation about team fit and willingness to play for certain franchises. Past public comments by Deion Sanders were interpreted by some as signals of an Eli Manning scenario. The family's view is that these were strategic statements, not ultimatums. They argue that rather than engage in discussion, teams chose a passive approach, no direct rebuttal, reduced contact, and a collective reluctance to invest a premium pick. If phone records and written communications corroborate coordination, these items could become central exhibits. Media tone shifted as the draft neared. Coverage that had emphasized production and leadership began highlighting intangibles, interviews, and perceived coachability. Anonymous sourcing appeared in multiple outlets, with claims that Sanders skipped combine drills out of arrogance, bristled at film critique, or told one club, "Maybe I'm not the guy for you," after a tense session. A widely cited line, "Nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback," was voiced by Colin Cowherd and circulated as shorthand for risk. The Sanders legal position is that these narratives did not arise organically, but reflected a coordinated leak pattern that undermined his market value. The family's contention is that this was primarily about control and compliance rather than football ability. They point out that Sanders did not fail a drug test, was not suspended, and did not produce poor athletic testing. His college resume included elite stretches and significant program elevation at 2 stops. The legal claim asserts that the league's power structure resisted a high-profile player aligned with a high-profile parent coach and an independent media presence. The allegation is that teams sought to avoid the perceived complexity that would come with selecting him early. The financial impact is a core component of the damages claim. Had Sanders been selected late first or early second round, projected 4-year compensation would likely have fallen between $30 to $35 million, with immediate access to higher tier endorsement opportunities and the brand leverage that accompanies a franchise quarterback designation. As a 5th round pick, the initial contract value is a fraction of that total, and associated off-field opportunities are typically narrower. The suit reportedly seeks not only lost salary, but also the broader economic value linked to draft position, sponsorships, licensing, and the visibility that accelerates an early career trajectory. The filing's scope, as described by sources close to the family, extends beyond the league office. It may involve media outlets, scouting firms, and specific executives if discovery shows coordination or materially false statements that affected value. The argument is that the draft slide harmed not only Shedeur, but also the broader Sanders brand, affecting perceptions of Deion Sanders as a recruiter, coach, and public figure. The family's view is that narrative construction around brand risk and celebrity backup produced a measurable economic and reputational loss. If a court authorizes discovery, the process would likely compel emails, internal draft notes, and message archives from teams and third-party intermediaries. Subpoenas could be served on media organizations for sourcing records related to anonymous quotes. That level of transparency would be unusual and could reveal how information flows during pre-draft periods. The legal theory moves beyond a single player's evaluation to the draft's integrity, whether owners or executives acted in concert to reduce a prospect's value for reasons unrelated to football performance. The league has not publicly addressed these specific allegations. Background comments from executives characterize the claims as overreach. The family's camp maintains they have documentation sufficient to proceed. The comparison points referenced by observers include Deflategate, Spygate, and the Colin Kaepernick grievance, not because the facts are the same, but because of the potential scope, policies, practices, and the balance of power between the league and individuals challenging its processes. Another dimension of the dispute involves how the NFL perceives Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and the autonomy he promotes. He built a large media footprint around his programs at Jackson State and Colorado, elevated his players' profiles, and spoke openly about fit and leverage. The family contends that this visibility, combined with statements about preferred destinations, triggered resistance. The complaint frames the response as a preference for compliance and predictability over independent branding and public negotiation. The suit also addresses the pre-draft decisions that critics point to, skipping the Senior Bowl, declining full workouts at the NFL Scouting Combine, and candid interviews about team fits. The family characterizes these as strategic choices commonly made by top prospects, not evidence of entitlement. Their view is that similar decisions by other players did not produce the same narrative because those players fit more comfortably within league expectations. The risk calculus is clear. Bringing a suit of this magnitude invites professional consequences. The family acknowledges that some within the league may react negatively. Their position is that the principle at stake, transparent and fair valuation, warrants the risk. The message they intend to send is that manufactured narratives and coordinated devaluation should face scrutiny, particularly when they affect earnings, opportunity, and reputation. If the case advances, several outcomes are possible. The court could find insufficient evidence of coordination, limiting the scope to individual judgments protected as opinion. It could also find enough to proceed to broader discovery, which would have implications beyond one player, including potential changes to how teams document evaluations and how media handle anonymous sourcing close to the draft. Agents might push for reforms, including clearer guardrails around leaks and standardized prospect communication records. For now, Sanders is working within the Browns structure. He has avoided public escalation beyond confirming focus on preparation and development. The lawsuit is a separate track managed by counsel. This dual approach, professional routine on the field and legal action off it, reflects the family's strategy. They intend to contest the process they believe harmed him while meeting club expectations day to day. The core allegations remain consistent across their statements. A talented quarterback saw his draft value suppressed by coordinated behavior tied to branding concerns and public positioning rather than football merit. Media narratives amplified that shift, and the result was a substantial, quantifiable loss. The remedy sought includes compensation and a measure of accountability that could deter similar conduct. Whether the claims are ultimately proven will depend on documentation and testimony. If emails, texts, and call logs substantiate coordination, the impact could be significant, prompting policy review around pre-draft communications and media engagement. If not, the case may narrow to disputes over opinion, perception, and the gray areas of scouting. Either way, the filing signals a willingness to confront entrenched practices and to test in court how far the process extends beyond film and interviews. This situation has moved from speculation to litigation. It addresses control, image, and power in a system that influences careers and compensation. It also underscores how public narratives can shape market outcomes. Sanders' path now has 2 tracks: earning opportunities on the field in Cleveland and seeking redress off the field for what the family views as an avoidable and orchestrated loss. The questions at stake are larger than one draft slot. They touch on how the league values independence, how information is weaponized, and what recourse exists when a player believes the evaluation moved from football to optics. The answers will emerge through practice reps and, potentially, through discovery and a courtroom record.